Good day everyone, my name is Vanessa Grace O. Basoc. Today I'm going to report my topic that is related to understanding the self. Okay, first we will know what is understanding the self. Understanding the self is about knowing who you are, your thoughts, your feelings, and behavior. It helps you become aware of your strengths, weaknesses, and how you relate to others. My topic is all about compare and contrast how the self has been represented across different disciplines and perspectives. Discipline and perspective are two parameters that are highly linked with an individual or self of a person. Every person has their own level of discipline, and perspective varies from one to another. Also, the self not only can be influenced by the different institutions, by literally everything the self is exposed to depending on the individual and how impersonable or easily influenced he/she may be. The way we understand the self can differ depending on discipline, like the psychology, sociology, or philosophy, and perspective, which means a person's unique way of seeing things. Everyone has their own sense of discipline and way of thinking, so their view of themselves is different. It also says that she or the self is shaped by outside influences like schools, media, or family, and how a person easily influenced depends on their personality. The representation of the self varies significantly across different disciplines and perspective. Here's a comparison of how the self is conceptualized in several key fields. But before that, we are going to know first the different disciplines. First, we have the psychology. The self in psychology is often understood as a collection of thoughts, feelings, and self-perception. It includes self-identity, self-concept, and self-esteem. Psychologists explore the self through theories such as the self-concept theory, which looks at the individual's perceived themselves, and self-esteem theory, which focuses on how self-worth impacts behavior. Psychological approaches emphasize an individual differences and internal processes. And in simple terms, the concept of self in psychology refers to how we see and think about ourselves. That involves the three main parts. First, we have the self-identity. This is about who we believe we are. Second, the self-concept. This is how we define ourselves or how we describe ourselves to others. And the third one is self-esteem. This is how much we like and value ourselves. Next, we have the philosophy. In philosophy, the self is examined through existential and metaphysical lenses. It is often discussed in terms of personal identity, consciousness, and the nature of existence. Perspective philosophers like Descartes have posited that the self is defined by consciousness. I think, therefore I am. While existentialists like Sartre view the self as a construct shaped by choices and actions. Philosophy often debates the nature of selfhood and its relation to the external world. So philosophy tackles the self through existential and metaphysical lenses. This means exploring the self-existence and its nature within the nature of existence. Key concept includes personal identity, consciousness, and nature of existence. Philosophical viewpoints vary considerably. For instance, Descartes famously argued that the consciousness defines the self, while existentialists like Sartre viewed that the self is a product of choices and actions. Next, we have sociology. Sociology views the self as social construct shaped by interactions and societal expectation. This seen as a product of social processes and cultural norms. The symbolic interaction perspective, particularly through George Herbert Mead and Irving, examines how social interaction and rules contribute to the development of self-concept. Sociology emphasizes how identity is shaped by context and group dynamics. Sociology, the self as a social construct, meaning it's shaped by interactions and societal expectations. The self isn't inherent, but it's a product of social processes and cultural norms. The symbolic interactions perspective, particularly the work of George Herbert Mead and Irving Goffman, highlights how social interactions and rules contribute to the development of self-concept. Sociology emphasizes that identity is shaped by social context and group of dynamics. Next, we have the anthropology. Anthropology explores the self within cultural context, focusing on how different societies understand and represent identity. In perspectives, anthropologists study how cultural practices, rituals, and social structures influence self-concepts. The concept of self is often analyzed in terms of cultural norms, collective identity, as seen in studies of indigenous and non-Western societies. So anthropology, explores the self within cultural context. It focuses on how the different societies understand and represent identity. It is also stated that anthropology study cultural practices, rituals, and social structures influenced by self-concept. Next, we have the literature. In literature, the self is often explored through characters, internal conflicts, personal journeys, and narrative structures. Literary representation of the self can reflect individual experience and societal issues. Authors use narrative techniques to delve into character psychological state of personal identities, highlighting the complexities of the self through storytelling. In literature, self is explored through characters' internal conflicts, their personal journeys, and the way stories are structured. Authors use narrative techniques to portray characters' psychological states and identities, offering insight into the complexities of the human self. Comparison: internal versus external focus. Psychology and philosophy is often focused on internal aspect of the self, such as we have the consciousness and the self-perception, while in sociology and anthropology, it focuses on internal influence of self-identity. Example, social interaction and cultural norms. Okay, when we say internal versus external or external, focus on the internal aspect of the self. Okay, in internal, it focuses in the aspects of or the internal aspect of the self, while the external, which is sociology and anthropology, emphasizes the external influences of self-identity. Example, that is social interaction and cultural norms. Now we have the individual versus collective. Psychology and literature tend to focus on individual self-exploration. So, sociology and literature, it focuses on individual or the self-exploration and personal experience. Whereas in the collective, we have the sociology and anthropology. Consider how the self is shaped by and contributes to collective social and cultural context. So, in individual, we have psychology and literature, and in the collective, we have the anthropology and sociology. Philosophical inquiry versus empirical study. Philosophy often engage in abstract theoretical inquiry into the nature of the self, while psychology, sociology, and anthropology use empirical research method to study self-concept in real-world context. Okay, philosophical inquiry versus empirical study. Philosophy often engage in abstract theoretical inquiry into the nature of the self, while in psychology and sociology, as well as anthropology, it uses empirical methods. Narrative versus analysis. Literature uses narrative to explore and express the self, providing subjective and artistic representation, whereas other disciplines like psychology and sociology use systematic analysis. Here in literature, it uses narrative to explore and express self, while in psychology and sociology, it uses systematic analysis. Overall, while each discipline offers unique insight into the self, they collectively contribute to a richer and more nuanced understanding of identity and selfhood. The different disciplines offers their own valuable perspective on what constitutes to the self. It has different perspective and disciplines with different value, but it constitutes to the self.